But there's been a discourse about people who only play D&D and people who only play indie RPGs or other flavors of
Right, and then
TTRPGs.
they usually started off with innocuous questions posted on Twitter. Like, people who only play D&D, what would it take to get you to try indie games? It starts off really and then it just blows the hell up.
Right.
I actually found the tweet that supposedly started it all. And it was obviously a joke. Obviously, there was a little sarcasm in it. And I think people are taking it way too personally.
You mean on Twitter, people don't don't key in on the nuance of things?
Yeah, because
Weird.
it's a very small character limit. There's not much room
Right.
for nuance at all. But
No.
in any case, like, I elaborated a little bit with somebody who asked, why do
I
you
thought
only play D&D?
Your comment was like spot on, brilliant even.
I didn't see it. What did you say?
He said, I am awesome.
Oh, yeah. Codes.
Well, that was part of it.
Right.
Basically, when it came down to it, we had fucking 25 D&D books out there.
Easily.
Maybe have been through 2 or 3 of them and actually done something in them.
Right.
And like, it's so hard to get everybody together and be like, hey, let's play this other thing because we have this thing we've been playing, we've been enjoying, we know how to play it. There's no startup time. And until the point where you went to the local comic book store and bought Call of Cthulhu and were like, hey, y'all want to play this? Like, it had never really crossed my mind. I had been asking questions about related to the Wildmount campaign we're doing as the home game now. And this was on Reddit. At least 2 or 3 people came in the comments like, oh, you shouldn't even be playing D&D if you're having this problem. Like, I didn't say I was having a problem. I just asked how you guys would handle something. And it's very intrusive. Like, if I'm not asking you, hey, I'd like to get into a new game, what would you recommend? I don't want to hear about other games. I'm on the D&D subreddit. Don't come in here with that crap.
Come here with that bullshit. I saw this thing that said the best way to get
Nobody got time for that.
Nobody got time for that shit. And the best way to get like the right answer online is to post the wrong answer. That way everybody will flood to correct you. And that's what it feels like. Like you posted an honest to God
seems
question.
like that would work in factual situations, but we are strictly in the realm of opinions here. So,
but like I feel like that's what happened. Like you in a D&D subreddit asked a question about D&D, and then you had all these people flood in there with these unsolicited advice about other games that literally had nothing to do with your question. It's like, why are you even on here? If you're that you've got that much of a hard on for other games, why are you here?
That's definitely a problem on Reddit. People going into subreddits of things they don't like.
Just to trash talk.
To trash talk or recruit for other things.
Right.
But I'm more interested in the overall concept of this thing, right? Yeah, there's people who take things the wrong way. There's people who intentionally say things mean-spirited. There's people who will jump into subreddit and say, you're in the wrong subreddit. You ought to be over here doing this cool thing. But overarchingly, D&D was where it all started. And did you notice I paused there? Because the first game I ever played was not D&D. 1976 or so, 77. I played a game called Bunnies and Burrows. It was a little game in a pamphlet. It was like $3 because, it's 1970.
Right.
And it was a role-playing game where you were a rabbit.
I'm going to play.
And there were like scout rabbits and fighter rabbits and everything. And you had little warrens. And the reason we got that game was because the D&D box set was too damn expensive.
Right.
And like, we could pay $3 for that. And then we quickly got into D&D, and then for years, that was the only thing. And it's easy to fall into, this is the game that we play. And I don't even want to say fall into, right? And fall, we were there, we wanted to be there, we were having fun.
Yeah, there are calculated steps to the addiction. Like, this is the gateway drug they wish marijuana was. Like,
I think there's a lot of people out there that love playing D&D. That would have a lot of fun with other games. But 1, are they open to the thought? And 2, Can they find out about it from somebody who's not being a dick?
Correct.
And
Can
do
they not be a dick about the fact that they only play D&D right now? And can the indie loving folks be more kinder, gentler, persuasive?
Right.
And do they actually have time to learn something other than D&D?
That's a great
Because
point.
if I've got a game Thursday and it's Monday right now, I'm not going to go to my people and be like, hey, I've got this new game. We should try it. I'll help you learn it or whatever. Like, that's something that might take a little more than 2 or 3 days to boot up and get into. And I think a lot of people ignore that fact that people who play TTRPGs nowadays it's definitely a hobby. Like, there are some people who are doing it as a job, but for most people, they go to work their 9 to 5, come home, feed the kids, bathe the kids, or do housework or whatever else they might have on their plate. And then they have 1 or 2 days a week that they play something. And when you consider like having to find a group that's playing random game number 5 and
I love that one. Have you read it?
So good.
offline at least, and actually getting everybody's schedules aligned and going and doing it, it's much bigger issue than I only want to play D&D usually.
So I'm going to come at this at a little different of an angle. So like, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you guys are saying. The accessibility of D&D is definitely there because I can Google search, 5e, Warhammer damage, and top thing before I even have to click anything will say it's 1D whatever. But if I want to know what damage a, Derringer does in Call of Cthulhu, when I Google search that, I ain't finding shit. I'm not finding nothing. If I do, I'm going to have to go through 3 leaks and a PDF image to
And God forbid it's also in the Call of Cthulhu video game
then
because you'll have to
nothing.
sort through both of them
It'd be
to
bullshit.
figure out which is which.
Right.
And so the accessibility of that makes D&D much more easy to get into.
The amount of resources out there.
Right. I can go to YouTube, I can go to Reddit, I can go to wherever, and I can find somebody to talk to, something to do. The other games, that's less prevalent. But at the same time, and this is going to be a little bit of a niche thing, but like women in TTRPGs, we know can be a very volatile place for women. Like there's a lot of time where women will get like a lot of shit. And so if you go into D&D, you're going to find other women that you can play with who can answer your questions, that can feel more comfortable. I have yet to see, more than maybe 10 women in Call of Cthulhu. And they're all people who are internet faces who the ability to actually talk to them is slim. So like the fact that D&D is so large, you're able to find those groups of people that you identify, whether it's, you're LGBTQIA+, all that, you're female, you're a minority, you're new, you're a veteran, you're coming from AD&D. Like there's so many niches in there, whereas the other groups, it's kind of just, here's this very small group of people who play this and you either get along or you don't. Like
the initial accessibility for D&D
off the chart.
out there, if you don't take cost into account when you say accessible.
Right.
They probably do have D&D books at libraries and such now.
Probably.
And you can Google pretty much everything. It would be time consuming, but you could. If you wanted to Google the rules of like Call of Cthulhu or Savage Worlds.
So here's my general
Rude.
feeling. I don't care what game you started with. D&D or Pathfinder was your entry point into total TTRPGs or Cyberpunk or whatever. Here's what I found. I got interested in Call of Cthulhu in a really weird way. A guy I play online D&D with, never met him in person. We've only played a few games, one-shots together. This little fringe group of friends.
Right.
And he was like, hey, I just won a Call of Cthulhu scenario on this podcast or stream or whatever. Be interesting to figure out how to play that. I've heard of that for years. And I've always been wondering about it. And so I was in the friendly local game store and there was $9 booklet, Call of Cthulhu beginner scenario. I went up to the counter with it. The guy says, it's $9, but for like 15 or 16 or 20, whatever it was, there's the starter set, and he started listing them all off. I'm like,
Yeah,
well,
and anytime
cool.
you show Dad a starter set, he's
Chaosium
right there.
starter sets are really good,
They
too.
are really good.
D&D starter sets are pretty good. I think the content and the value you get with Chaosium stuff is a little more. They pack a lot more in there. But starter sets in general, here is a short, condensed set of rules for you. Here's a scenario for you to run. Here's some pre-made characters. So with very little prep, you and a group of folks can start trying out a game. And that's what I love about it. But my point is, something intrigued me. I went and checked it out, and then I got this thing, and I asked you guys, hey, would y'all want to play Call of Cthulhu with me? I did the pouty face and everything.
And all we heard was, do you want to spend more time at my house with me? And we're like,
because I'm old and lonely. But from that, right? So years we were D&D.
10, nearly.
Now, Call of Cthulhu. We've since learned Savage World. We played Street Wolves from Table Cat Games. We learned a lot about Titan Effect, and we're looking to play that soon. I'm seeing all kinds of games out there now that I want to play, where a year ago, I was just in D&D, happily in D&D.
How many different ways can I make a dragon interesting? Like,
somebody asked a question one time, what monsters would you like to see more of in D&D? My answer was dragon.
Actual fucking dragons.
You don't find them a lot.
No.
It's in the name.
Here's one thing, though. I do think, like, we've been very much so on the side of, play whatever you want to play. But I do think that in today's day and age where the access to things is so heavy, like, you can get anything you want with enough patience, that if you play, like, Dungeons & Dragons and you've never reached out and looked at the other games, you're doing yourself a disservice for one reason and one reason only. Between the two of you, can you name me one person at Wizards of the Coast that you've spoken to? Who?
Well, you got to remember, John will shoot his shot with anybody.
That's fair. Okay, a person that you could say you've actually built a friendship with at Wizards of the Coast? None. None.
The how many people games and the smaller games?
How many people at Chaosium do we now personally know? We got to ask the guy who writes Call of Cthulhu, like, straight up questions, and, like, I made dad jokes at your expense with him, and we laughed together. Like, that's something.
He laughed the heartiest, and I was a little hurt.
I know, it was great. But, like, that kind of stuff, like, those smaller indie, not even indie really, but those smaller companies, like, they are so accessible. Like,
hey, when Street Wolves makes it big,
we already know
Table Cat Games is a household word. It's like, yeah,
I know.
I knew him back when.
We're on the second promo, like, review thing for him.
Yeah, right. That was really well written too.
It was. But I mean, like, that's something that I don't think we would have ever gotten for D&D. And the fact that we got to go to Chaosium Con and meet Bridget and meet, John Wick, the other one, and, like, all these people that we got to meet and actually talk to, like, not just, like, fangirl out, but actually have real
So there's a great D&D community.
But you're never going to
but with Mercer. The indie games, the community is a little more intimate.
Right.
You can get really close to the source with those things. That is cool. That's a really good point.
So you could definitely get in there.
But here's what I want to say. I had a blast Friday night when we got everybody over for our in-person D&D game, back to playing the one, our first love. Oh, and I'll never stop loving it. I've just found out that there's room in my heart
for
more games.
And God bless you for running 7 people through a campaign. God bless you.
You do you.
Yeah, that's the combination.
And if you is, I just want to play D&D, have fun with it.
Hell yeah.
And if you do you means you could, like, look and see, maybe we've convinced some people to look at other games and just check them out, because 6, 7, 8 months ago, it wasn't even on our radar, and now we've expanded. I just wanted to put a bow around that conversation.